Uh, Want to welcome everyone to the June 3rd, 2021 Portland Tableau user group. Today we're going to be talking about Tableau CRM plus Einstein Analytics, as well as usability testing our Tableau dashboards. Like I said, that agenda. By the way, I'm Brooks Barth. I'm on the leadership team with the Portland Tableau user group. I'm not sure if all of y'all have met me. It's been a little while since I've got my face on the video here. And I think it's been a while for all of us since we met in person. So I may not have met some of you on the call here today, but I am a member of the leadership team for the Portland Tableau user group. So we're going to do a bit of housekeeping here up front, and then we'll move that over to Bobby Brill from Salesforce. He's going to be talking to us about Tableau CRM plus Einstein Analytics, how that can help build out your analytics platform. And then we've got Roshni Gohil from MIT talking to us about some of her thoughts and strategies around usability testing for dashboards and how those have improved their data practice over at MIT. So that's going to be a great talk as well. Like I said, I'm a member of the leadership team here. As you all have seen in the past few months here, we've kind of divvied up responsibility for presentation topics and hosting. So we'll be the last iteration of that today with myself and Debbie Yu. As a note, we're going to take a break in July, so no meeting coming up for the next month, but we will kick that back off again on the first Thursday of August with new content there. So look for more to come there and a further scheduling for the rest of the year. So that'll likely come from Brian here in the next few weeks. Always a call out. If anyone has any ideas for content, you're always welcome to submit there. We've got a form submission on the homepage for the Portland Tableau user group. So please, if you have anything that you'd like to share there or you'd like to volunteer to present, you can always do that there as well. We've got a Gmail account where you can always submit ideas, topics, folks to submit or folks to present further content. So please, if you have any ideas, feel free to reach out. And specific call out, we've seen more and more content get posted on YouTube from TUGs across the world. It's been a great resource to see some of the great things that folks are deploying in their specific regions, their specific practices, varied use cases for Tableau, for some of the Salesforce add-ins that package nicely with Tableau and so on and so forth, as well as design. So if y'all are looking for any new innovative ideas or inspiration for how to use Tableau, how to build out your analytics practice, that's really a fantastic resource.
And our meeting is being recorded here, and it'll be posted in that same spot. So you'll see it show up around tomorrow, probably.
Yep, good call. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, that's about it. That's all I have for housekeeping. So without further ado, let's kick it over to Bobby from Salesforce to talk about Einstein Analytics and Tableau CRM.
Awesome. Thanks, you,
Bobby.
Brooks. So I'm excited to be here. This is my second ever TUG. So really excited. So thanks, for inviting me. I come from Salesforce. I'm about to hit my 10-year mark. And then of course, all of you Tableau users know Salesforce purchased Tableau about almost 2 years ago. And I've been lucky enough to work with the team to figure out, the integration strategy and how to really get the best out of both. So today, I'm going to talk to you about business science. It's something that Tableau recently came out with, this business science concept, and it's actually taking pieces of Einstein and putting it within Tableau, and there's a lot more to it than just what I'm going to show you. But let's talk about how to really put the power of data science in the hands of business people. And again, thank you for inviting me to this TUG. I love it. I've been working with Salesforce Trailblazers, that's what we call them at Salesforce, for quite some time. I'm really excited to work with the Zens and all of the Tableau enthusiasts out there. So it's been a really exciting time because I love technology, I love data. So I feel like I fit in, or I felt at home within the kind of the data fam and all of the Tableau user groups. So, really excited to be able to share what I'm doing. So starting off with kind of what we're doing, why do you hear Einstein in Tableau? 2021.1 release, that was one of the big features of Tableau, was bringing Einstein, it's actually Einstein Discovery, into Tableau. And why is that such a big deal? So why it's such a big deal, you've got to think about how businesses are really consuming their data and really looking at machine learning. Data science is business critical. Having, being able to tell your users what is going to happen based on what has happened historically, it's really important to make kind of quicker decisions. But we're seeing that, 87%, I can't remember where this VentureBeat 2019, it's at the bottom, 87% of data science products never make it to production. And that's because there's a bottleneck in data science today. Anyone can, not anyone can do it. There's only certain people can really analyze, do these machine learning models using Python. It's a skill it's rapidly growing, but organizations today are bottlenecked by this data science process. So how do we make it easier? How do we make non-data scientists really be able to move the needle? And in fact, I consider myself a non-data scientist. I love data, I love analyzing, I understand business, but I don't understand all of the technology or all of the techniques that go into data science. I'm learning it, I'm managing a product around it, but I don't consider myself that persona. I consider myself just, someone that can do it, and but I want to solve problems. So I consider myself sort of a business scientist, which is not a term that anyone has really talked about before. It was something we internally discussed a lot, like who is the persona for this? And we've been talking about business science internally for a very long time. And finally, it's the Tableau marketing team has put it out there for everyone. And just to kind of explain what we mean by business science, it's got to be simple. Code, if there's code involved, it's too complicated. We've got to make it point and click. That's really the Salesforce simple way. We've been doing everything, and it's got to be fast. You've got to be able to iterate quickly. You've got to be able to get your insights out to those business users as soon as possible. The longer you wait to come up with the best predictive model, there's certain things where you may have had missed opportunities. And in order to go simple and fast, it's got to be trusted. You've got to understand what we're doing with the data and how we built the model. So everything about the machine learning is presented to you to tell you how this machine learning works. So everything is kind of transparent. We have ethical AI capabilities built in, so we can look at, if you're worried about bias, we can look at bias and proxy bias, and we can also look at disparate impacts. So one category being favored over others. So if you're thinking age or gender or race, we can look at those things and we can tell you what's going on. So the transparency is key. And then the last is being able to quickly deploy and operationalize that is super useful. If you're writing Python code to build a model, well, how are you going to connect that to your data when your data is in Salesforce or Tableau or wherever? I guess data is not in Tableau, but when your data is being visualized in Tableau, how do you get that there quickly? How do you add these things to workflow? That's what we're really focused on. That's what business science is. That's the problems that we're trying to solve. And we're trying to build this layer on top of complicated machine learning. So on the left, data science, very precise. They'll be able to pinpoint exactly where to go. So if you were to look on a map, data science would say, go to exactly this location. But when you think business science, it's more about context and how are you going to get there and what directions are you going to take? And it might say, we're going to take you this way because the other way had traffic. You have to understand what is going on. Why is it telling you this? That's really important. That's where we're focused with business science. And how are we doing this? Well, we're doing it through the Einstein Discovery in Tableau feature. In fact, Einstein Discovery has been a product at Salesforce for over 2 years. We're very successful with our customers, but we want to take this technology and bring it into Tableau, this simple, intuitive, no code require, trusted and transparent, all these things. We want to put the predictions at the point of decision making. So if you're in Tableau looking at data why not use machine learning to give you more information to make a better decision? So it's not about just, writing it back to Salesforce. We want the predictions where you are making those decisions. So what is Einstein Discovery? Well, it is a part of Tableau CRM. What is Tableau CRM? It is formerly known as Einstein Analytics. Salesforce loves to rename products. This is actually the third iteration named of the product. We started as Wave Analytics, and it was the kind of the BI tool for Salesforce, built on Salesforce and the Salesforce platform to give you better reporting capabilities. We then changed to Einstein Analytics when we purchased this company BeyondCore that could do some predictive analytics. So we said, hey, this is now more than just a BI tool. It's actually a predictive analytics tool. And then with the purchase of Tableau, we had these two kind of data tools and said, okay, well, we've got customers on Einstein Analytics and we've got tons of customers on Tableau, and everyone loves the Tableau brand. Let's do the right thing. Let's take Einstein Analytics, let's put it within the Tableau business unit. So now, I'm part of Tableau now, and although Salesforce acquired Tableau, Tableau acquired Einstein Analytics, and I feel like I'm part of the team. And in order to make it work, we've really got to make Tableau CRM a part of the Tableau product group, right? We sell Tableau Prep, Tableau Online, Tableau Server. Well, now Tableau CRM. The name, I don't know, I like the name a little bit better than Einstein Analytics, but I've definitely heard some feedback on the name. Like, is it another CRM tool? No, it's the best kind of analytics for CRM. And it's part of our broader integration strategy that we're doing within Tableau and Salesforce. The first thing we've done is we've taken the Einstein layer and we've put it across all products. So Einstein Discovery in Tableau with the 2021.1 release put Einstein across all of these products. So you can access it in desktop. There's a Tableau Prep prediction node, so you can apply predictions directly to your data. It's of course available in Tableau Online and Tableau Server. So Einstein is now powered kind of across. And if we dig into Tableau CRM a little bit more, you can kind of see the tech stack. So this is all within the Salesforce ecosystem. It's in the Salesforce data centers. It is a license that our customers have to purchase. So it's not included with Salesforce. You have to kind of like with Tableau Prep, it's an add-on to Salesforce today. And it's sort of the complete platform. So it has the data layer built in. There's something very similar to Tableau Prep within Tableau CRM. So you can do your transformations visually, which is very important for machine learning. If you're building kind of a machine learning data to train a machine learning model, well, you want to make sure that you have certain fields in there. So you might want to aggregate certain things. So you're going to do some level of prep before you actually analyze it. The Einstein Discovery Stack, or our no-code AI stack, sits on top of our data layer. So today it does require you getting data into the Tableau CRM data store. It is not a operational data store database. It is a flat file system. So just upload a CSV file or we integrate with APIs. That's how it works today. We're moving to a system where we don't care where the data is. Kind of like Tableau has never cared where data is. They just make it easy to connect. Tableau CRM is going to start to utilize that. So again, for our integration strategy, we try to take the best of both. There was never this AI layer in Tableau. Tableau has been great for integrating with all kinds of third-party machine learning tools. There's TabPy so that you can build your own Python code if you want. There's data robot connectors. There's all these tools, but nothing has ever been kind of part of the Tableau process until Einstein Discovery. So this is what Tableau CRM looks like, the stack, and oops. And with that, you can start building your predictive Tableau dashboard, get your predictive analytics within Tableau. So how does that really work? Part of our integration strategy, rather than build everything on, let's say, the Tableau server code base, we're moving into a world where it's more of a hybrid model. So the Einstein Discovery services that run on top of Salesforce will continue to run on top of Salesforce, but we're building it in a way that it is seamless to the end user where it is, or at least we're trying to build it in a way that it's seamless. So within Tableau, I can access my machine learning models that were built in Tableau CRM, and I can put them within my dashboards. So we've got a dashboard extension that's live today in the 21.1 release. So drag and drop. You do have to authenticate to Salesforce. We're working on our licensing model so that you don't have to have multiple licenses. So bear with us on that. But you can see predictions based on your data in your Tableau dashboard. So in this case, we're looking at on-time delivery. So if you've got a dashboard that's looking at orders and deliveries, why not predict the on-time delivery likelihood? So this 50 is a percentage likelihood to ship on time. And then you can see the reasons for that. We did machine learning. We pulled out the top factors, and we're telling you exactly what's going on to this, why we think it's this this prediction. But also we can tell you how you can potentially improve it. So we're highlighting if you could change the service level on some of your shipments, potentially that could lead to a higher on-time delivery rate. Again, it's looking at all your historical data. So there's different levers that can be pulled to increase the data or the prediction. So this is one example. You could do it on kind of a cross-sell type promotion targeting. So let's say you're looking at your different regions and you want to upsell a specific SKU. Well, let's go through your dashboard, set some parameters, and get predictions based on that. So do your kind of what if scenario. And then for, again, on-time payments, so if you're looking at, these are just some examples. There's many examples you can do here. So let's expect it. What's the expected on-time payment likelihood for all your invoices? You can pull that in. This one example with this dashboard extension can show you the predictions within the extension, but through table calc or analytics extension, there's an integration as well. So you can bring it directly into your table calc, get the predictions right there. So you can build your visualizations, or the best way to do it is to use either Tableau Prep or Tableau CRM recipes to write out the prediction directly to your data source and visualize based on the output of Tableau Prep. Then you can sort of do whatever you want with it. So lots of options there. Again, just here's another use case. These are some of our SEs. When the technology came out, they were all excited. They started building out these different capabilities. So lots of options. In fact, I wanted to leave everyone kind of with this list of here's kinds of things that can be predicted. We support binary classification type problems. So predict, is this going to win? Yes or no? Is this going to be late? Yes or no? True, false, whatever. And we also can do regression analysis where we're predicting numbers. So if I want to look at a process like the time it takes to close a deal or the time it takes to ship or whatever, we can predict those things as well. There's just some other ones across different industries that our customers are doing today. And then the last thing is I want to leave everyone with, you want to try it yourself. So this is all available today. If you have Tableau desktop, or as long as you have some Tableau 21.1 release, you can, this tiny URL will take you to a blog that I wrote that'll go step by step on spinning up a Salesforce instance. So if you don't have a Salesforce instance, it'll spin up a free Salesforce instance that has all the capabilities and licenses. You build your predictive model, you'll deploy it, and you'll consume it within Tableau desktop using the dashboard extension. So with that, I ask everyone to try this out. Hopefully this is interesting, and looking forward to feedback on the integration. So thank you very much, and back to you, Brooks.
Hey, thanks. Really appreciate it, Bobby. This is a great run through. If anyone has any questions, we got about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. You're welcome to post that in the Q&A. and I'm happy to ask that.
I'm gonna actually answer a question that I don't see, and the question usually comes up: what if I don't have Salesforce? What if I'm just a Tableau customer? How does this work? So first off, kind of like Tableau Prep and the data management SKUs within Tableau, Einstein Discovery in Tableau is an add-on. So it isn't part of the regular kind of creator SKU. It is an add-on. So what happens is you purchase the add-on, and we're going to spin up a Salesforce instance for you. So yes, Salesforce can do, manage your accounts and contacts and opportunities and all those things, but we're going to give you just a piece of it. We're going to give you just the Tableau CRM functionality so that you can build your models. Once you build your models and deploy them, you will then see them within Tableau. So you have the SKU, your Tableau instance. Anyone can see the dashboard extension. When you log in, you log into Salesforce. It knows that you have this capability, and then you can see those models and connect those models to your Tableau visualizations. So yes, you will get an instance of Salesforce, and that's because that's where the engine runs in the Salesforce cloud.
Great context. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Hey, Bobby, what's your favorite deployment of this that you've seen out in the wild?
Well, so don't forget, I go back to the sales when this is just in Salesforce. So I've got a lot of there's a lot of things I like how it's being used there. For instance, there's a company, Pearson, and this is a public customer story, but they're looking at students, and they're kind of like a student is a lead for them, right? If they're education business, if you will, and they're looking for students for their whatever universities, and they basically look at the students. What are the likelihood that they're going to kind of enroll in their company? So I really like kind of how they looked at it from this other angle in the education space. I've worked with UNICEF, and they have all this data on people that donate. And I helped them with this thing where we looked across all of their data and identified the contacts that are most likely to go from just a kind of a, an ad hoc donor to someone who donates on a kind of scheduled basis. So we looked at what are all the things that lead to that person becoming this scheduled donation, because that's where they're going to get most of their revenue from, or donations, I guess. So really, that's been kind of a fun product, because I got to work with them and help them out with their data. And then on the Tableau side, working with a customer, it's not a public story yet, but they're basically looking at it's another kind of lead type. Lead scoring type situation, but they're looking across millions of leads that have already been closed. So their sales teams have worked these leads, and they've already kind of closed them out, and they want to kind of look at them from a different angle. Are these leads ones that they should bring back into their business? So they're analyzing what are the ones that are actually most likely to still actually be active, even though they've been kind of closed out. And they're figuring out that if they can reopen these leads, that's a huge increase in revenue for their business.
And Bobby, you said write back capabilities to databases for this data mirrors the capabilities that all the folks on the call would be familiar with in Tableau Prep.
Yeah, so within Tableau Prep, of course, you can output to wherever you want in Tableau Prep, or it could be you can output to Snowflake. You can of course, a CSV file or a hyper file. You can apply the predictions within Prep and then write it out to wherever you want. So that's kind of the bulk predict.
Great.
And then visualize, of course, however you want.
Fantastic. Okay, it looks like we're good on open questions. So I think we can move over to Roshni. Really appreciate the time, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we got Roshni Gohil from MIT. She's going to be walking us through use cases around usability testing in Tableau dashboard. So feel free to take it away.
Cool. thanks. I hope you guys can see my screen properly.
Looks good.
Excellent. So as Brooks mentioned, I am a data analyst at MIT, and my screen just did something really funny. Sorry, I'm going to have to turn it off and turn it back on. Technical difficulties today, man. It's not a good day for me for presentations.
All facing them.
All right, let's try that instead. All right. So as Brooks mentioned, I'm a data analyst at MIT. I work in resource development, which is just a fancy way of saying fundraising. And though I'm in at MIT, I actually have a Portland background. I went to school in Portland. I dined regularly at the Roxy. I miss the ever-present mist that is Portland. Oh crap! Sorry, my screen freaked out again. This. One more time. I think I just need to stop moving. That's probably the problem. All right. Last attempt, I swear. I'm gonna make it this time. So yeah, I have a Portland background, even though I'm now in Cambridge. So I'm here to talk about usability testing Tableau dashboards. Usability testing is a process that's used for web stuff all the time, but it's something that we can apply to Tableau dashboards to sort of build better products for our users and help them lead to more successful outcomes. So fundraisers are like salespeople. Holy cow, it's doing it again.
Roshni, do you want to see if maybe it's just if you take it out of that and just do it in PowerPoint, because we can see the previews with your notes in there.
Let me cancel out one more time.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had this much difficulty in a presentation before.
I think I might have jinxed you by describing the same problem I had a few
You
weeks ago.
did. You totally did.
I'm sorry. I will take that one on the chin.
All right. Last time. I'm not going to move it. All right. So fundraisers, they're like salespeople. They have a portfolio of prospective donors that are like sales leads, and they have annual fundraising goals, just like sales folks have goals. And we were tasked with building something in Tableau that helps fundraisers and their managers manage their portfolios. And though we call it the fundraiser portfolio tool, though we've had Tableau for many, many years, like at the point when we started building this, I think we'd had it for close to 5 years. Not many people had actually been using Tableau. And a lot of the stuff that we had built, we had started out assuming that they would be able to get it. Like they'd know how to use charts, they'd know how to use filters, everything would be intuitive, and they didn't get it. There were things that we built out that they ended up not needing, or that they just didn't understand how to use. So we wanted to make sure that this project that has like the widest audience that we'd had thus far, and it had the highest visibility, that we actually were on the right track as we built it. And that's how we started doing usability testing. So usability testing, when I first mention it, a lot of people will think that means it's user acceptance testing, which it's not. It's very different. So user acceptance testing is all about, am I building the product right? So are all the knobs and switches working? Is the data right? Does it meet the specs? Does it actually load quickly? Do the extracts perform? And that, again, is mostly what we had done in the past. But again, people weren't using our products because what we'd done is we'd asked, or does the product work? We hadn't asked, does it work for our users? And so usability testing is a way to, or adding it to your user testing is a way to make sure that you actually are building products that work for your users. So usability testing is about 3 main things. Is the product intuitive? Is it easy to use? And if it's not easy to use, is it easy to learn to use? Does it help fundraisers, users achieve their goals? Do they actually succeed when using it? It's one thing to say the product can do this, but it's something different to say the user can do this with the product. And then lastly, do people actually want to use it? Because if it's slow or annoying or painful, they're going to actively avoid using it. They're going to email you for a data export, and you're going to be like, dude, I built you something, right? So what usability testing helps us do is it helps us make sure that we're building the right product. And again, it's done all the time for websites and for mobile apps. You know, is it easy to log in? Can you find the product? Can you do X or Y in the site? It's also used for physical products. So things like coffee makers, like, does it have the right buttons in the right places? And are the filters easy to use and replace? So back before I worked in fundraising, I actually worked in the MIT libraries. And that's where I was first exposed to usability testing. What became a UX team, it was originally just a web team. They let me participate as one of the note takers in a usability test that they did. And that was my first exposure to it. I also later ended up being a participant in a test for a course reserves and textbook submission site that was built out by our central IT department. At some point, way later, I was called in to help actually plan a usability test. And this usability test wasn't actually on a website. It was on a physical space. We actually wanted library staff to step into the shoes of our patrons, of our users, and understand what it was like to use the library. And so we essentially did a usability test of our spaces. So looking at things like, how hard is it to find books, going from looking it up in the computer to actually finding it in the stacks. What about the technology? Like, are the book scanners and the self-checkout machines easy for people to use? And throughout this whole process, what we ended up again doing was basically usability testing the space. And we learned a lot of things about signage, for example, like there was inconsistent or non-existing signage. There were differences in how library materials were arranged in different libraries. Like the same type of material would be arranged by author in one place and by library call number in another. And when people used multiple libraries, that was sort of a mind shift that they had to do. But the thing that sort of stuck with me in my brain was how much doing this testing actually helped us prioritize space changes later on. So instead of people just spouting their opinion, oh, we should have signage like this, or this is the type of signage this should have, or these books should be arranged this way, we actually had some data, some actual evidence of what was working and what wasn't in the spaces, and that helped ground space decisions. So throughout the whole building of FPT, we sort of talked about we did our regular requirements gathering. We showed people metrics. We showed them dashboards, and we got feedback. At some point, we learned that what we were going for, which was something closer to like a traditional dashboard, that was going to be a complete fail with our users. And so we went back and redesigned. And in the process, we added some business users to our team. They weren't fundraisers or people who are actually in the frontline offices, but they're the people who support the frontline offices. And their role eventually was going to be to socialize this into the world. They're the ones who have the knowledge of what some of these metrics mean and how they're used in the departments. And in those conversations, we just ended up having so many circular decisions about what colors to use, how to lay things out, what charts to use, and all sorts of things. It was just opinion after opinion after opinion. And people would always say, well, if I were a fundraiser, I would want to do blah, 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 blah. And we had lots of conversations about colors, things like these dreaded traffic light colors. I tried to shut that conversation down so many times, and it was really painful, but we finally did it. The thing that kept happening was that we didn't know what would actually stick with our users because, bottom line, we are not the user. But we still need to understand how our users actually interpret the charts that we're showing them, how they actually interact with the filters and the other controls in Tableau. And we want to be able to see or be able to use what we learned to confirm our design choices or revise and test in an iterative build process. So all the while we were, yelling about traffic light colors, all I could think about was, well, if Tableau, why can't we use it for Tableau? I mean, Tableau dashboards are web-based on the server. They're interactive tools with buttons, just like websites. And they have filters, just like coffee makers. And, sometimes they need a little navigational help, like a library space. So, hey, look at that. That's almost like a Tableau workbook. So how do we do it? There are a whole host of resources out there. And my computer freaked out again. I got this. I think I got this. I think I can fix this.
User testing PowerPoint on the fly.
All right, let's see. All right, There we go. All right, so how do we do this? There are a whole host of resources out on the web and in books and all of that about usability testing, and many are geared towards web usability, and that's actually really great. A lot of the principles are exactly the same regardless of what you're testing. I'm going to go through that whole process and also make point out where things can be different for data products. So in usability testing, your whole goal is to put the tool in front of users and watch about 5 users and watch how as they attempt to perform specific tasks in the tool. Throughout this testing, we want them to think aloud so that we can actually sort of get into their brain and understand what they're thinking before they click on something and that sort of thing. We make it clear to them that we're testing the tool, we're not testing them. That the idea is that they, a lot of times users will think that you are really judging them. If they get something wrong, it's on them, but really it's on the tool, it's on whoever developed it, us. So they need to not worry, and that letting them know that it had in advance lets them get a little less stressed out about being watched as they work on work with the workbook. We also tell them that we want them to be open and honest with them or with us. If they are trying to sugarcoat things, we're not going to get the feedback that we need to actually make positive changes to whatever we're building. So to do a usability test, you first have to plan it. The first part of planning it is writing a script. You want to identify what you want to test. So we start usually by identifying what are the goals of the dashboard. What should the user be able to accomplish with it or on it? What are we not sure about on the dashboard? Is there terminology? Are there filters that we're not sure need to be there, or filters that we think might be missing, but we don't want to overload the dashboard just yet? Are there charts that we're not sure if the users will be able to get them, or if they're showing the data in the right way? And then what do we want to learn from the users? I mean, is there something about the process or the policy or the context in which the dashboard will be used that we want to understand so that we can make improvements, if not to this product, then maybe for future products that we build? And then for the things that we want to test, we write realistic, actionable scenarios based on those goals. So we want to try to incorporate as much of those testing goals into the scenarios as possible so that we can test as much as we can. There are there's some guidelines about what those or how hard those tasks are. You want to make sure you have some easy, medium, and hard tasks in there. If you do too many hard tasks because you really want to test the tough stuff, well, the user's going to get overwhelmed. If you have too many easy things, you may not actually learn any or learn enough to make it worthwhile. So you want to have a little bit of a mix so that people have those easy wins as they're testing, but you also learn what you need to learn. There's also an intro and a conclusion that you put into every test, and there's a slight adjustment that you make from test to test. Once you have what you're testing, you need the people. Your testing team, we try to minimally have at least 2 people, the facilitator who wields the script and the note taker who takes notes. They don't take verbatim notes unless there's a really good quote. They just make comments about, where does the user get stuck, or what are they repeatedly doing that maybe is something we want to discourage, or, is there something that they really like? There have been times when we've had one person play both roles. It's really draining if you do that. And there's been times when we have like a half dozen note takers just watching remotely in Zoom. And that's actually really great because it helps everyone see what's going on with the tool that we've built. We also need 1 or 2 testers to test the test to make sure that what we're about to test is actually going to fit in the timeline, that it it actually flows well, that it actually answers all of the things that we want it to answer, or it addresses all the things that we want to learn about. And then finally, you can't do usability testing without actual users. So you want about 5 users per scenario. We generally schedule for more because people drop out, though what we've seen in Zoom times is that our people are actually more able to keep their testing appointments with us, which is kind of awesome. The question of 5 always, people always wonder why 5? So Jacob Nielsen of the Nielsen Norman Group and someone else whose name is not coming to mind right now. They did some studies, I want to say back in the 80s, about what happens with usability testing. Like how many problems do people find? What's the sweet spot? And generally what they found is that there's a lot of diminishing returns. You can test 100 people, but you're really only going to be fixing the biggest issues. And usually by the time you get to your 5th user, you will have discovered most of the biggest issues. If you happen to have more users to test with and more time, it's often better to just test with 5, find and fix those issues, and then test the new version with the next 5, because you'll actually be able to pinpoint more usability issues that way. And one thing to note about which users you test with, in data products, you really want to get people who are actually going to be using the data dashboard. Out in the web world, you probably can pick someone off the street and say, hey, can you help me test this shopping site? Because everyone knows how to shop online, or maybe shops online sometimes, especially in COVID times. But in data dashboards, there's often a lot of jargon and business knowledge that's sort of baked in. And a lot of the times people don't get data. They only get the data that is actually relevant to them. So if you put data that isn't relevant to someone in front of them and then expect them to do things with that data, you're not really going to get the same experience as if you put someone who is actually going to use this dashboard and actually cares about the data and actually has relevant data in front of them. And we've used IT staff as testers of the test. And even then it's a little rough because they don't always know what these metrics mean, or what the relevance of this bar being twice as long as that other bar on the bar chart means. So yeah. And okay, once you've got all your users, you've got everyone scheduled, then you conduct the test. There's a couple of different ways of doing tests. There's typical tests where you have like 2 to 4 scenarios, and you schedule for an hour, but usually take 30 to 45 minutes. And there's also guerrilla or intercept testing, which is named for how you actually sometimes intercept someone in a coffee shop or in the mall or whatever to get them to spend 10 or 15 minutes helping you with your test. We've done tests in person. We just pushed out version 2 of FPT in January. Version 1 was out and released pre-COVID. Version 2 was built entirely during COVID. So we did version 1 testing almost entirely in person. We had 1 remote user because everyone was scared of Zoom, which, given my experiences today, maybe that's a good thing. But in Zoom times, in COVID times, we actually went we went all remote. We had no in-person option. And it worked really well once people were actually used to using the technology. There's also that, one thing that I hear people say is, oh, great, you can record. Well, yeah, you can record, but are you really going to watch those recordings? We don't record because we would have to do paperwork and human subject stuff. And I'm just like, I don't want to take 2 hours of classes to record videos that I'm never going to watch. So we don't record. This is the intro. It is really, really long. Basically, it goes through those 3 things that I mentioned earlier. Think aloud. We're testing the tool, not you. You can do no wrong. And be open and honest with us. You can't hurt our feelings. It tells the user what we're going to do. And that's this chunk right here, this highlighted chunk. This is what we're going to look at today. This is specifically what this workbook is, or this dashboard, or the set of dashboards, whatever it is. And then we talk them through how the session will go. And we mentioned things like the tool is still under development. Some of the features and functionality isn't built out yet. The data is test data. It may be a bit old. We also say that the test data is test data, even if it isn't, because we don't want them to go into a rabbit hole of, well, this number should be 5 when it says 4. Why is that wrong? We're like, yes, it's test data. Moving on. And again, I mentioned this before. I can't drill it in enough. If the data isn't relevant to the user, they're probably not going to care, and they're not going to engage with your dashboard. So try to make it as relevant to your users as possible. So part of the reason I have this chunk highlighted is this is the only chunk of this really, 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 really long script that changes. So you have to write 2 sentences in the intro every time, and that's about it. Once you're done with the intro, which is mostly the moderator talking, you then get the user talking. And getting them to talk it can be tough for people who aren't used to doing interviews and things like that. But what we found is that asking them about their role, about how they use certain data, usually data that's related to whatever it is we're about to test. Maybe we ask them to explain, when was the last time you pulled data for topic X? And actually have them, instead of just talking about themselves, they're talking about, here's what they did last week or whatever. And that kind of also gets their mindset into we're talking about this type of data. Great. And once you get them talking, you can then show them the dashboard. And for data dashboards, we make sure that we always show or always ask this first impressions question. We've forgotten about it once, and it really ended up biting us in the butt. This whole question, the first impressions question is, it's talk out loud as you describe your first impressions of the page. Don't click around too much. Just tell us what strikes you about this page, what you can do here, what it's for. That lets them actually take a breath and get situated as they sort of look at and stare at the dashboard and sort of glean whatever they can from it. It helps them learn what the chart does. It gives them a little bit of a break and makes it possible for us to understand, because they're telling us what they think of this or what their first impressions are. It helps us understand if they actually get the chart. Because if they don't get the chart, we're probably going to have to ask a couple more questions just to get them to where they can do something with the dashboard. So this is an example of one of the dashboards or part of a dashboard that we tested. It's 6 tiles or grouped in 2 rows. You click on a tile and a detail table pops up underneath it. There's some filters, which I don't think that we even bothered with when we did testing. We did intercept or gorilla testing or hallway testing, which is the 1 scenario per person, 10 to 15 minutes. And we lured them to testing with cookies. That's why we had scenarios that were all named for a cookie. And this is what one of the scenarios looked like. We basically asked, where would you go to find X on this page? So the reason why we were asking, where do you go to find X, is we were trying to figure out if the terms that we had used on this chart, if the names of each of the tiles actually resonated with the users. These were all terms that were pretty much invented for this dashboard. We didn't have a shared terminology around it. So we really wanted to find out, are these the right terms? If they're not, how would the user describe this? So we asked, where would you go to find X, to see if they actually went to the right tile. And regardless of which tile they went to, we then asked, well, what does that phrase mean to you? So even if they got it wrong, we would still get some understanding of why they went that route. And then we asked them to pick a prospect. So that the whole goal of that question is to figure out, do they see that, hey, I can just click on this to show detail. But you'll notice that we didn't actually mention specifics about how to interact with the page. We didn't ask them to filter something or click something or highlight something. We simply said, here's your goal. Find prospects that you need to reach out to, or pick one of the prospects. So we give them that goal, and then we watch what they do. And then after we've done all of our scenarios, we close it out like we'd close an interview. Do you have any questions for me? And thanks for testing. There are a whole bunch of caveats for the actual conducting of the tests. Like in the moment, here's some things that you do and don't do. The user will ask you questions about things in the dashboard as you're going, and you have to be really, really comfortable not answering them. So if they were to ask, what does this button do? You might ask a boomerang question. Well, what do you think that button does? What do you expect that button to do? And so there's often times that you will just leave these questions, like act like a therapist and leave these questions on the table for the entire meeting. And then at the end, the closing is your opportunity to sort of close the loop on those elements. We also do a little bit of user training in the closing, because there's times when people will get stuck and they really want to know what the right answer was. Sometimes there isn't one, but they really want to know what they should have been doing in a certain situation. Or what we've also gotten is, well, does this tool also do this? And we're like, why don't you try it out? And if they want to try it out, we let them. Or if they just want to know the answer, we'll show them again in the closing after the testing is done. This is how you can do X, Y, or Z. There are a ton of resources out there about how to do usability testing and how to moderate. And there are some videos on the Nielsen Norman Group website on using silence, which I am really bad about, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So check that out. Also, if you have a UX or user experience group in your company, another way to just learn is by asking. See if they have opportunities for you to participate, whether as a user actually testing a website or whatever, or as an observer during a usability test they conduct. Because UX folks like the Tableau community, they're willing to share methods and bring people into the fold, because better UX is better for all of us. So the whole point of usability testing is to find issues. What's confusing? One of the things that we heard was, I don't know what this chart means, or what's the difference between these two things that are right next to each other? We find out what's hard, or what did we think was easy that ends up not being so easy. And we learn what people like and don't like. We also hear a lot of things that are more like behavior and attitude and feeling-y, fuzzy stuff. So one of the comments we heard once was, this page makes me antsy. And what we learned was the antsiness was induced by us using Tableau's default bright orange. The orange kind of stressed someone out. So we're like, oh, okay, well, that's bad. Maybe let's tone down that orange. And toning down the orange really did help make it less of an in-your-face page. there are things that we learned about working with managers as well. So one of our scenarios was to compare fundraisers or compare the performance of two fundraisers. And the first few managers we tested this thing with said, well, we don't compare fundraisers. Every fundraiser is different. Every portfolio is different. We're like, oh, okay, you can't compare fundraisers, but you do. We know you do. So let's set up this context and explain, okay, you see this happening with fundraiser X. You want to make sure that that's not an anomaly, that or maybe it is an anomaly. You want to confirm that. So how would you look to see if other people also are experiencing X? That's a comparison. I mean, it may not use the word compare, but it's a comparison. So when we present these types of scenarios in training, in testing, even in your requirements gathering, we got to be really careful not to use compare because it's a trigger word, but instead set the context in that vague and annoying way. The other thing is that usability testing can help you prioritize usability issues as well. It helps the development team, especially if you have developers who don't spend a lot of time with users. It helps them build empathy with your users. You remember that whole like walking in the user's shoes thing from the physical usability testing in the library. This is very similar. You're sort of watching the user use what you built them, and you can see what isn't working. You hear it, you see it, and you see both the delight and the aha moments and the complaints. It's also a great way to build relationships because your users, they have your undivided attention for a chunk of time, and they see that you care about what they need to accomplish, that you're actually invested not just in the product that you're building or the output that you're providing them, but in their outcomes. Like, can they actually use this thing? And if so, what are they going to get from it? It also helped us find some evangelizers for FTT and for Tableau in general. All right, you've done all of your testing with 5 users. You then have to do analysis. So as soon as possible after the last test, we just try to get everyone who is involved in the room at the same time. And we go through we end up usually splitting this into 2 meetings. The first meeting is the problems meeting, where we review all the issues, every single one of them, even if they're duplicates. We use Trello for that. And then we prioritize the issues, figuring out what's the deal breaker, what's high impact, low impact. Then usually in a second meeting, and sometimes with the whole team, but sometimes just with the developers, we have our solutions meeting where we look at all of the potential solutions, because some solutions may help solve multiple problems. Some solutions might be specific to a single problem. And then we build our action plan based on that. So these are Trello boards that we used, and I have time for a couple before and afters, barely. So this is the first tab out of 11 that we worked on. This was like very, very, very early stages. I think it may have been the first test we did based on the timestamp that's on there. And we learned that we're not designers. That was the first thing that we learned. So this thing has an almost invisible title. It has this like weird line thing on the left where the left navigation is. We ended up working with our communications team to just sort of pop the design a little bit. People didn't, when they went to use the left nav, they didn't actually know where they were or where they were going. So our design team kind of helped us say, hey, maybe you should leave a signpost there. Tell them that they're on my portfolio. And hey, maybe pop the title so they know that they're in this, this workbook. We learned other things about like things that we had thought were intelligent defaults. So that thing that's highlighted up at the top there are 3 filters, and our intent from the beginning was that those 3 filters would be applied to every single dashboard except this one. But we would let people set the context for the entire dashboard on one page and then kind of set it and forget it as they traveled around. It turned out that because these filters were there, people would play with them, and they started playing with them and not seeing any data change, and they were getting annoyed that there was no data changing. So it was sort of oh, right, okay, our intelligent defaults were really stupid. Let's not do that. Let's just force each of these filters only to appear on the pages they need to appear on. So we went down to 1 filter in the header. We also learned about the data. So we went into this page thinking these are all the things that we have metrics around. Well, for solicitations and amount solicited, so this is when you ask the donor for X amount of money for purpose Y, right? For that concept, we only have 1 goal in the system, and it's for a donation amount between X and Y amounts. And so because we only have the 1 metric, we decided that's the only metric we're going to show. Well, it turns out that's not quite right. We only have one goal in the system, but different offices care about different amounts. And even the offices whose only goal is that middle thing, and even they have no other goals in or out of the system around money. They want to know, are there people spending too much time at the lower end? Like, are you asking for less money than you really should be asking because of you're in this office and you're supposed to be asking for this amount of money? Or are you reaching too far into someone else's territory? And so we ended up having to add these extra bars at the lower amount and a higher amount so that we can make this tool that is not only more universal, so more offices could use it, even though they don't use the goals in the system. But it's also a more usable tool because it provides a little bit more functionality than just the one bucket that we know we have a goal around. And the other thing that we tried really hard to do is push information into the dashboard in places that people could find it easily. And these info icons are an example of that. Through I don't know how many rounds of testing. I think by round 5 maybe we gave up on testing the info icons, but we tried so many different colors, sizes, and locations for these info icons. And through testing, we finally realized it doesn't matter where or how we make them appear. We ended up making them smaller and putting them in blue. But there were some things that we would have to train to. There are some things that will need to be learned. And info icons are one of those things. We just have to, push people to these info icons. Scatter plots are hard for us. We try to give people complete control over how they chart 2 different amounts because we generally just use bar charts, but we had to use a scatter plot here. We learned a lot about just making sure that we set a context, like things like adding a header. And also that the idea of too much flexibility, like on these axes, you can chart any one metric against any one of the other metrics. But people got overwhelmed by that too many options. So we ended up having to just throw a smaller set of options with an info icon saying, these are these options, this is why these options matter. And we put all of that into a single dropdown instead of giving them complete flexibility. I'm gonna scroll through all this. There we go. Moral of the story. So what have we learned from usability testing? I hope I've taught you that we are not our users typically, and testing with users is imperative in making sure that we build user-centered dashboards. Data visualization is hard. I mean, for us, we got to make sure that we're, following best practices, or if we're not, that we're breaking them because we know that it's okay to break them in these situations. But for our users, a lot of them don't have very much comfort with data or with data tools, and so we got to be aware of their comfort with data viz, and at the same time keep in mind those data viz best practices. And we also need to make sure that we're remembering that we're not just designing data products, we're designing web and mobile tools. And a lot of the web works a certain way, and we should be designing in ways that are consistent with the way the web at large works. The good news is that we don't have to start from scratch. It's not like there's a whole new side of data viz UX best practices. Clearly, there's a whole wealth of methods and practices outside of the data viz world, from information architecture, user interface design, user-centered design, UX, that we can apply in building our Tableau dashboards. Usability testing is one of those methods, and it can get us really good insight into how our users work and how they approach our Tableau dashboards. And that in turn will help us build better, more useful and usable products for our users, which will also then lead to better outcomes for them. So we just need to be willing to experiment with what's out there. And now I'm done. I have a bunch of resources. I will throw them in the chat in just a moment.
Thanks so much. That was fantastic. And I gotta say, those 3 points at the end there are really fantastic, and I think great mantras to live by as we're developing our analytics tools and products for our customers. I do not see any open questions in the chat. It looked like a few people posted questions in process that you were able to answer there, so that's great. If anyone has any further questions, feel free to pose them, or you're also free to email us at our Gmail account, the Portland Tableau User Group Gmail account, and we can follow up directly with Roshni as well. I do have a few takeaways, and I've seen those in the QA section here, so I will follow up with you directly on those, Roshni.
Cool. Thanks.
I have a quick question. That was a great presentation, by the way. It's clear you did some usability testing on the presentation itself, because it was very clear. There was tons of great information, and you basically walked us through your process. And I was writing down questions along the way to ask at the end here, and you basically answered every single one of them in your presentation. So
it helps when you've done this thing a few times.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'll be revisiting this presentation. So question around getting people to do this with you. Do you ever have to offer any incentives, or what's your process of reaching out to potential people to test the dashboard with?
So the first time we did testing, so the cookies were our second round of testing. The first time we did testing, we kind of just had to say that we were sort of giving them a preview, and we really wanted their help, and sort of like use that as a persuasive method. But by the time we like probably got into the third or fourth round, like we didn't have to work very hard to find people willing. We just had to find people who are available in the time frame that we had available for testing. So I mean, I think that first test is really the hard one, but once people actually start seeing the benefit of it, and again, it's that whole building relationships. Once you've built your relationship with your users, you're going to be able to get them to come back. And another thing that we've seen is like outside of actually just testing, they're now reaching out to us when they have questions about their workflow. It's something that we weren't really supposed to be or like it wasn't our role to do, was help them with these various workflows, but they're now actually coming to us, and so to see how can we get them data to help them in their regular workflow. So it really is, those first few tests can really, you know, make or break whether you're able to get people. But you know, a lot of people are just like, if you're willing to do the short tests, like do you have 10 or 15 minutes you can spare with me? And then you're able to later show them, this is what came out of you helping us. Like, this is a vast improvement, or even if this is a minor improvement, but hey, that thing that you mentioned, or that thing that we saw happening when you were testing, like we fixed that because we saw how bad it was. Like we actually responded to you. A lot of those little tiny things can really help get people to come back and be your friends and want to play in your sandbox.
That's great. Thanks, Roshni. I know we're over on time, and I want to be mindful of everyone's calendar. So I've got a few takeaways. I will follow up directly with you. Thanks again, Bobby, for joining here and sharing some things with from Einstein and all that with the group here as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you in August.